Good day. Let me start again. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. It's 4 o'clock. Johnny, would you like to open us and then I can get my paper in the right place?
This is so kontakty kontakty ciągle kierunki
So above us. So in absence of the microphone is below us and they're above us. Right? Okay. So apologies, let's just note an apology for Councillor Ogilvie, who'll be about 5 minutes late. He's just got to get his iPad. So I'll move, seconded by thank you, Harold. All in favour? Aye. Carried. So welcome to Public Forum. So a reminder of 5 minutes, and I've got two lists. I've got the list of the pre-registered voters, and then I've got Mr. Forey, Mr. Bensman, but I'm also assuming Mr. Williamson. Mr. Howyer. Sir.
For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Ray Howyer, and on the 21st June this year, I spoke to the council about a letter that I wrote to the council dated the 11th of June, and it was to do with the Peach Island issue, and I raised a series of questions, and I asked at the board to get answers to them, and I think I've waited long enough. I would like answers to them, please. Based on what I heard this afternoon, you're all for the ratepayer. I'd like to see it actually put into practice, please.
I'm not going to get caught in a rabbit hole with answering. My understanding is there's a meeting between council officers and the landowners to occur. So that you want your letter answered prior to that.
This has got nothing to do with that.
Okay.
This is my questions and the answers that I want.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes.
A long journey, hasn't it? Community board's sort of coming to an end as it stands. The new one coming in. I'd like to thank Brent Maru and Trendy Walker and Richard for guidance and help over the last 3 years. I've tried all manner of things. I've tried being nice. I've tried, for want of a better word, punching you between the eyes. Nowhere do I see anything changing. Now, recently, now this is bad, 2 people I have been trying to help seem to have had very, very harsh action taken against them. My personal opinion, it's because of me. One in question, I brought it up twice now. A young family was detained at their property during a state of emergency by police. The police did not want to discuss with them what had happened. Anyway, the end result was, let's find out what is the reason for this visit. Drugs? Gang-related incidents? Terror? No. Simply to allow council staff to see if a middle-aged woman may or may not be living in a caravan. What an utter waste of resources. This is appalling. This is what I expect from senior management. Unfortunately, we've got 2 here today. It's very difficult for me to say this in front of you gentlemen because I might like you both. But things have to be said. So, moving on, senior management. Fervent denials over the last 3 years over wrongdoing by staff. But what do I hear? Even touches on it by our current mayor about all we've done things better with compliance staff. The 4 councillors today, the mayoral councillors, all saying there's issues with compliance staff. Yet I'm deemed unreasonable. I'm an unreasonable complainant when I bring these issues. So Who's telling the truth? Am I wrong? Are all the staff members wonderful, nice people? Well, I suggest you ask the young German woman who mentioned this is how Nazi Germany started. Hope you can all be proud of yourselves over that. That's a low moment for Avon District Council, low moment. And it will be going to the media. She doesn't want to go to the media, but I've been pushing her to go to the media. We'll see how it goes. Huh? Right, on to the next thing. Leonie Ray made further denials of wrongdoing and staff misleading and not telling the truth. I got an email here. I was going to read it out last time. I'm just going to go through it. And now standing here, I almost don't want to again. So I'm not going to read it out. But the council stated they got it wrong over the buried cars, and that's the end of it. Got it wrong. No. What do we have here? We have a letter from senior staff to Janine Dowding. I've already presented proof that Janine Dowding was in possession of a photograph which clearly showed the vehicle in the riverbed with wheels and tyres on it. Now, this letter alludes to they showed Taylor's Contracting, who apparently gave the wrong information. They've shown them the information, and then they said, no, this isn't the car didn't have wheels on it. Did they send this photograph through that Janine Dowding had? And the information I've got shows they didn't. So I put it to the council, in my opinion, that TDC knew all along that this car was the car I presented to the council. Okay? And just simply going, yeah, we got it wrong, when all of along senior management knew that this car was the car. Unless, of course, everyone's blind in enforcement, but surely not. Surely not. So what am I to believe? Am I wrong? Or does this wall of silence carry on? Perhaps TDC will now, no doubt, somewhere along the line, as Ray's watching. Hello there in YouTube land. It's time for answers. It's time for TDC to start communicating. So I ask now that Richard Kirby and Steve Manners actually communicate with me. Actually sit down and let's talk this out, because I like you two gentlemen, okay?
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Forey.
If you get used to your equipment not working, same because I've been touch long for long enough, so I think that's from. Yes, thank you for the community board for the opportunity to speak, and if I may say for Councillor David Ogilvie, probably the last time we interact in this way, to see on the bike tracks. It brings me to my subject matter. I'll be speaking twice today with the chair's permission, because one of the other cycle track guys going to be here. He gave me the diagram when it comes to it. Okay, so this is about, there's something in front of you, you've got it, but I'll read it out. The committee board has had the Tasman Taste Trail viewing platform submission on its books since 2002. That's when I recall first bringing it up. I was assured at various meetings from both Richard Kirby and the board chair that the funding was in place and that the completion was in fact by the latest to June 2022. Again, the 4 meetings have passed and not even a response to me, the applicant. I just feel I've been left out of the process. Notwithstanding that I'm prepared to push it, there comes a point at which you're going to say, why? This is already a nonsense and biggest belief as to why we don't bother attending community board meetings. So maybe this can be transferred into the next 3 years. Let's have this communication. Let's have the conversation and communicate back. I've got my email address. Go home, enjoy your life or whatever. But I need to have an engagement. So I'm feeling that we put it out there and it doesn't quite come back this way. So Board Chair Brent Maru is committed to having an answer to my point query at the Great Mountain candidate meeting last week. I felt I needed to just get it out there. And Brent kindly met me in the street, and we had a street side meeting, as you do. It was a quick one, good goodbye, and it's all good. And Brent has committed to having an answer today. So I want to know really what is the outcome of my query. When will the construction begin? Not if it's going to begin, when it's going to begin. On completion date handover. Because technically we know we live in a gorgeous area. And have those facilities available for people to enjoy after a hot ride. You don't want to sit at the top of the view, boiling hot in summer, and then the temperature goes off the clock. So you just keep moving. People can't enjoy the area unless they've got the facilities to enjoy it.
So I'm going to break out standing orders, Mr. Forey. So Mr. Cubic gave me response, so thank you for giving me full warning.
Okay, so that's.
So ready in 2 weeks for installation, erected at the end of October.
And what's going to be installed?
Sage showers. So they've redesigned sage showers because in terms of being vandal proof and the most robust up there.
Oh, okay. So it's going to be a safe show. Okay, start in 2 weeks and finish by October.
Manufacturing 2 weeks, finished end of October.
And I invite you to the opening.
Absolutely.
You an e-bike or manual? We do
Not
manual.
an Thank you, Mr. Forey.
Okay.
If you stay, so this is on behalf of Mr. Benson.
Yeah, so the following one, we'll get back to you. So one of our bike pack members in another club is John Benson, and he asked me to, he was unable to do this today. It's from Motueka Cycle Repairs request. This will be a copy there. To the GDC, the disrepair of some of our local cycleways needs to be addressed. Issues in general are weeds growing on the sides, drastically reducing width from 2 bike width down to 1. Soil buildup under these weeds is encouraging regrowth. The vertical separation markers between cycleway and road broken are missing. So quite large lengths of cycleway are not protected. That's the issue there. The glass on the cycleways. John was saying that right up at the corner of Queen Vic and Wildman, all of those riders have had, tyres go bad because of glass there. We do have a sweeper, so can we not engage the biking sweepers for us? These issues should be dealt with on a regular inspection and maintenance program. The edges should be scrapped, clean of vegetation and soil, then swept. Both can be done easily and with a small mechanical scraper and then provide on mechanical sweeper. I'm just reading this. Inspection of Water Lane, Queen Victoria Street, near the corner of Wildman, and Motueka side of the Hot Bridge on-ramp are just 3 examples that demonstrate the issue: glass, vegetation, and the like. This request is not only for locals but also visitors who are told by the vacation advertising the Great Roads Trail is a great world-class ride and cycleway. But in truth, it is all that is that substandard. Regards John Manson and his people. Thank you. Thank you. That's for voting, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Community Board, with Christmas fast approaching and no apparent evidence of real improvement to the road surfaces on the intersection of Wakawera and High Streets, also called State Highway 60, I consider, along with many of my local community, that serious remedial action is overdue. We certainly don't want an accident to force this action, do we? Another area that's needing attention is in specific patches of the road along the coastal highway before the turn off to Tasman. I realise there are large volumes of heavy trucks continually using this roadway, which will put pressure on the road surface, but I'm sure prudent maintenance would be of benefit. And finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor David Ogilvie and Board Member Richard Horrell for the constructive support to my submissions in the public forum, and wish them both a healthy, happy, long retirement for their futures.
Thank you. Was there any other public forum? I don't have this. Okay. So we're going to move, I've just slightly amended the agenda. We're going to do item 7.1 in terms of discretionary grants. Yeah. If I can push you towards page 6. Have any of the board members got any questions in terms of the applications in front of them?
I want to declare interest, Mr. Chair, in the Community Charitable Trust.
Are you still trustee,
I'm
councillor?
still a trustee.
Okay, noted. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I explain to me which venue that the Filipino community currently?
I will ask you, that will go there again. Okay, so if we start from the top one, Motueka Events Charitable Trust, we can start like Christmas parade. Any questions? Wouldn't expect any questions, so happy as recommended? Yep. Ms. Hart, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would have to. So on behalf of the Motueka Events Charitable Trust, I did speak to Chair Murray about this a couple of months ago. The road closure for State Highway 60 on Paul Street to Bocawera Street has doubled in cost. So it's gone from 2,500 to 5,000. This is due to new rules that have been put into place whereby we're no longer allowed to use volunteers on, for example, the Greenwood Street, Tudor Street and down towards Atkins Street. Everybody has to be STMF approved. So, and this was confirmed by Troy Chapman at WSP. So, Fulton Hogan can't do it this year due to staff shortages, so we've gone to Downer. And yes,
Like a good deal.
but so these increases have been confirmed and they're absolutely correct. So my worry is we're going to have a little bit of a shortfall because we've already applied for the grants without knowing this information. So I don't know if there's any more coffers that we can beg off you. No refund or
Yeah, possibly. Thanks, Claire. Okay, so let's move on to Nelson Tasman Filipino community. So, Ms. Simiella?
Joy input.
Joy, yeah.
Yeah, Miss Joy, she's our treasurer in PFCI. She asked through this vendor boards to attend the meeting, but unfortunately she's sick at the moment. She sent me, my name is Mary Artisan, by the way. Through this vendor boards, she's asked me to come and represent the group.
There was one question from a councillor, and it was whereabouts do you meet?
At the St. Andrews Church next to the police station.
Thank you.
Every
Any other questions?
I was wondering whether this, and this is for category C, isn't it, which is youth. I was wondering if that could be, is it more than just youth who are taking part in?
of the whole family, really. I mean, not just young children, adults, and yeah, because we do also have a adult dance group. For the children, we have the ukulele and dance.
Thank you. Yes, I imagine that might be true. Perhaps the winning with words is for youth, but then for category A, perhaps the can switch those two.
That's the only category we'll ever go. But any other questions in terms of? Thank you. So winning with words, is anybody here from winning with words? There's only a couple of questions, which makes it difficult. Board members, councillors, winning with words application was in front of you. Did you have enough information to make a decision? You wanted to feel that one?
Definitely had some bank holes in it, because it's sort of based on travel costs. Yeah. But anyway, I think the application is genuine, and I think if she's doing what she says she's doing, it's excellent. So I feel something. All right then.
Councillor Morgan,
It's really, Mr. Chair, I just wonder where the ladies that have facilitated in the past, are they no longer involved that we're having to bring people in from out of our community to make this happen?
I don't. So my question is, if we've got questions, do we want to defer this one? Okay. Yeah, we'll defer that. We're going to defer.
Yeah.
And then, we can all support by any questions of that application. So I'm assuming that we are going to be moving Motueka Events Charitable Trust, Nelson Tasman Filipino Community, will support Lake Motueka, $500 each for those grants. And probably all out of A. Category A. And then winning for words, we just have, we needed to come to the board and answer those questions. So my key one was it St. Thomas's that are applying for it, or was it the individuals that were applying for it, and how did that work?
I've had the same question.
All right, so it's motion, so moved, seconded by Board Member Horrell's on a roll. Any other questions? Discussion, all those in favour, aye. It's carried. Now, the most controversial and important discussions currently taking on in Motueka. Welcome, Drew. Come join us at the table. So welcome, Drew, from Downers, and tell us about our roads and our plans. So Drew and I met each other about 10, 11, 12 years ago in his role as an engineer at Nelson City Council. He was the third person in that little that group. It was called Mr. Kirby at that stage. For the trip, for August interview. I think it's pretty good. Thanks. You can still stand if you're comfortable.
I'll stand, but I'll tell them my book open because I'm sure I'll take some notes. Thank you on. Yeah, kia ora, my name's Drew Hayes. I'm the Alliance Manager for the Tasman Alliance. You would have seen the logo around on here, around the network, etc. Go to the next slide, please. So who are we? We were Downer and Tasman District Council, and we had a traditional based contract. And then through, I guess, working together really well, we sort of thought, surely we can do this better. And we came up with the alliance. We both council and contractor worked together in one team, cutting out all the duplication that's there, and making it a lot more streamlined with some really good asset-driven decision-making for the network. We're responsible for boundary maintenance of the council road network, obviously excluding Golden Bay and Murchison. Yeah, and it's not just limited to roading anymore either. We're sort of seen as council's doers, so we get involved in a lot of different bits and pieces. So I guess I'm just here today to talk to you really a little about what we've done in the Motueka board area in the last 12 months. So we obviously do a lot of heavy pavement maintenance of the road network. Last year we did 2,800 squares of dig outs or stabilisation. So that's where the roads got too bad to do anything with, where you come in and we do heavy maintenance to fix it. Did 1,000 squares of surface leveling, so that's where you've got hollows and things. We cover it up with asphalt so it rides a little bit smoother. 731 potholes were filled in the Motueka area last year. There's a few. Some other exciting bits and pieces as well. In the drainage area, we do high shoulder removal, which is the middle photo there. That just allows the water to get from the steel pavement into the shoulder of the road and soak away, so that the pavement of the road doesn't become saturated and deteriorate prematurely. Some other interesting bits, block culverts and sumps. We cleared 255 with water blasters last year in the Motueka region. It's quite a fair few, and there's a fair few more to do out there. The reseals is a big component of our spend each year. Last financial, we did 1,580 squares of asphalt in the Motueka area, as well as 40,730 square metres of chip seal, reseals. And it's all about renewing that wearing course to make sure that it's got good texture and it's also waterproof. We obviously, we've got the photo down here of the Walker Kaiteri asphalt rehab that was just done a few months ago now. Other bits and pieces. We obviously do environmental response as well. Trees down. We did 74 call outs to trees last financial. Where a tree falls down and some guys go out, set up traffic management, cut it up and get it off the road. Next slide, please. Thank you. I guess moving on from that, upcoming, there's a few big ticket items in Motueka coming up shortly. The reseal program, these are the roads here that we're doing, and just on a bit of a heat map, I realised that the ward cuts in a little bit, but this is all, it was within Kiwi, so I've just included it. Obviously, Motueka Valley Highway, Motueka Highway, Parr Street, Queen Vic, Ruoka Kaiteri, and Weka Road are all roads that we're going to be doing work on in terms of reseals this financial year. With the two in blue there being asphalt overlays. So you see the Queen Vic Street,
That's actually the intersection there with college, so there'll be a bit of a hot point, which I'll cover off later for the public, which is good to get it done. Emergency works, a large component and more increasingly in recent years of our work is emergency works. We do spend a lot of budget on emergency works. Obviously, we had the July storms last year, we had the July and the August storms this year. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars of cleanup and recovery work. And yeah, the team, it's like second nature to the team. They're just really good at doing it. So you've got Dougie up the right-hand side there having a bit of Kai from New Zealand. They dropped off a bunch of biscuits, which was really cool. So I guess hot points that we're aware of, and I guess me being here is to understand some other hot points from the community that you guys will get fed into. So the College Street Queen Vic intersection, that pothole in the middle, we cannot stop the potholing. Every time it rains, it just blows to pieces. We fill it with mix, we fill it with asphalt, it just keeps blowing. So we're actually going to redo the whole intersection with asphalt. That's been given to TJ Industries. They're going to deliver it for us over here, and that's scheduled for October, so next month, which is pretty exciting. Queen Vic reseal, there's been a fair bit of flack coming and going about the Queen Vic reseal. It's performing as well as it can at the moment. It's the 5th layer of seal on the road, which technically speaking is getting towards the end of where you want to be. You don't really want 5 layers of seal. It encourages binder to come up, which is what we're seeing here, binder rise. The long and the short of it is there's a post-winter inspection to see what it looks like, and then there'll be some decisions being made whether we do anything further, or whether we just put up with a bit of an ugly looking seal that's completely functional.
I'd correct that. It's very, very noisy. Any vehicle travelling over it roars. So no, it's not functioning correct because I live at the end of it.
Oh, I see.
So as soon as I hit it, you hear it roar. It roars right through any type of vehicle, model or roll. So no, it's not up to scratch and it doesn't need to be fixed. No doubt about that. So
Sure.
sorry.
I
I think you should do that test and see how you get on. And it just shows that it is totally just the makeup, the fact the stones have disappeared, you've got big holes in it, so to speak. It really does make any type of tyre that you can kick up a stick.
Yeah, sure. No, so what I mean with functional is it's waterproof.
Probably is. Yeah.
So Parr Street,
Talk for just a bit. No, read that. Thanks.
sorry. I'll just wait for the GIF to start again. This is we do GIFs now as well. We're pretty technologically advanced. This is Parr Street. You'll see the faults there in August 2020, 2021, and then bam, obviously vehicles are using it as a shortcut to get around High Street. So this is what we're dealing with, and there's a lot of noise coming from Parr Street and the local community about how quickly it's deteriorating. We're completely aware of how quickly it's deteriorating. It's a hot topic of conversation. To address it, we've got a few things coming along. Prior to Christmas, we'll be moving in when the weather allows, obviously, with heavy pavement. So we'll get that emulsion mill in there and we'll be fixing up a lot of the pavement. We've also bought 880 metres of reseal forward from future years to this year to waterproof it, to try and give it a bit more life than what we've got currently. And then obviously there's some other bits and pieces coming up. There's obviously a reduced speed limit coming up with the speed management plan. It's got out for consultation next year outside the school, which should discourage.
What you've got on their course.
Well, thank you, Trinity. Thank you. And then a new speed table as well outside the school, so that they should try and deter other people using it, as well as looking at other options. But there's a bit of a tricky one because you can't stop people using roads. And then obviously the other hot point that we had a fair bit of noise about, and communication with different members of the community and council, etc., was the High Street footpaths post-construction out there. They were particularly dirty. We had that steam cleaned about 3 months ago now, and just had great feedback about it. So that was sorted that one. So I guess questions. Have you guys got any questions for me? Did you find this valuable? Would you find me being here, more frequently, maybe each quarter, helpful? What would you
I think it'd be great. So questions for Drew?
I might not be able to answer all of them now, but if I don't, I'll note them down and I will get back to you.
Just one,
Councillor Oakenby.
I have a very good friend who lives in Arcadia Road, Drew.
Yes.
Have you seen him yet?
Yes, our Inspector Dean has been out and met with Ron.
Right.
Lovely chap, he said. What he was talking about and there's a bit of a disconnect between what he was actually talking about and what we understood he was talking about. We've got our heads together now. The road's been graded. We know what he's talking about, and we do have a job in the system to go and fix it.
And look, just ignore past week for a while. It doesn't really matter.
Thanks, Councillor Oakenby. Any other questions for Drew?
Councillor Garden, the elevator above the chair.
So Drew, appreciate the really good working relationship that you have with us, so thank you. I guess I have one question that comes from numerous voices in my community about how many times should we have to refill the same hole before the actual design and layout gets reviewed, bearing in mind that since we've had the emergency works, which we understand all the other day-to-day maintenance goes on hold to cover the emergency works, and I don't condone that at all, but at what point do we go, we actually need to find a budget to redo a seal that's appropriate and fit for service instead of doing a Band-Aid upon a Band-Aid?
So I take it you're talking about pothole repair?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess pothole repair is a bit of a means to an end. But a pothole repair isn't a permanent solution. It's treating something that comes about from the pavement not being right, or a seal layer being broken and water getting in. And it's never going to waterproof it completely. So the idea is you either fill it and then chip seal it if you're in summer, and that will waterproof it and you're likely to keep that there. Or go along, if you have several potholes, go and do some heavy pavement maintenance, dig it out or stabilise it. Throughout winter though, you don't have a lot of options because you can't seal this time of year. It's too cold, the seal will just strip, fall off. So throughout winter, pothole repairs are used to hold as a holding treatment, and sometimes they don't last. In some high stress areas, they pluck out, they fail. In other areas, they're there and they're there for years. As well as it's not just a time of year thing, it's also a budgetary constraint. Obviously, we can't afford to do all the pothole treatment, repair every pothole in the network each year. So we might do a pothole treatment to try and hold it until we can afford to fix it properly.
So one last question, if I may. Out of the 731 potholes that you've done, how many were they of the same hole being refilled?
That's a great question. I'll get back to you.
Other questions? Councillor Oakenby.
Just one more, Drew. I was talking to a roading engineer consultant over the weekend, and I actually mentioned to say how our potholes were recurring, that he felt the overseas emulsion which comes in is not as high a standard as it used to be, which you may know as well as yourself. Does that factor in these potholes recurring or not?
No, it's not. So the product that comes in from overseas is just bitumen.
Yes.
So then it's refined in New Zealand. We've got plants in Littleton and New Plymouth at the refinery there. They actually refine it into either a cutback bitumen, which we don't use on the Tasman network, or a bitumen emulsion. Difference is one's suspended in kerosene, one's suspended in water. So the quality of the emulsion, I don't believe is an issue, no.
And the quality of the bitumen?
I don't believe it's an issue, no.
He felt it was, but he's in Wellington.
Sure.
So that was his answer to some of the problems which are happening.
Yeah, sure.
In
And
Wellington.
there may be, but that's just, I guess, not something I've not experienced myself. I know that there is and I don't want to draw any conclusions. I know there's an older school of thought that bitumen emulsion isn't as good as cutback bitumen. But I think scientifically they're pretty close these days. Early on, yeah, there was a bit of a difference, but.
Alderman Horrell, the thing we're noticing now on the roads, obviously it's really bad on the state highways, but even on our TDC roads is, which obviously must be caused by the 50-ton ratings, we're getting a lot of tracking. The
Surface ruts, yes.
yeah, no, well, it's wheel mark tracks.
Yes.
And particular one is further down King Edward Street, Queen Victoria Street from the faulty bit of seal. I'm starting to see it now. That must be one of the hardest bits of road in the district. Yet you're still starting to get it tracking. And that's quite a worry because it shows that the whole base of the road has probably not ever been prepared well enough for 50 tonnes. And, you know, what the hell are we going to do about this? Because the cost to do it must be horrendous. So tracking is obviously starting to show up quite dramatically on state highways, but also on TDC highways.
It is, yeah. I guess it's wheel rut is one of the failure modes that we do treat. I guess, really holistically speaking, roads were built a long time ago for very much fewer vehicles, and obviously, as you allude to, lighter vehicles. So I guess it's only natural that what we find underneath the roads probably isn't quite fit for purpose.
Yes.
I know we're doing an area-wide pavement treatment on Kerr Hill Road this year up Nelson Lakes.
Yes.
And that site is once again rutted like that. Obviously one lane where the logging trucks are laden.
And but the long term, it must be only going to get worse. And are we going to need to actually give some of these roads a bit more expensive attention now to stop it getting actually worse? Because I can't see the government dropping the 50-tonne rating. No way. But there is definite, quite dramatic damage in the roads that wasn't there before.
Yeah, it all feeds into that sort of the asset management side of it. Yeah, it's definitely, that's, food for thought.
Because, you know, maybe TBC needs to be planning for and trying to get some funding down the central government or something to try and, you know, they're getting the massive break off with their, through NZTA, their road user charges of 50 tonnes. So if somehow we've got to get a bit more of that onto our rural roads. As you say, logging trucks is one, but there's shingle trucks, like, you know, this sort of thing. There's not just logging, that's only one of them.
Yeah.
I think somehow we've got to get some funding to do some decent repairs, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, just so it's on that, the council does have some fantastic asset management staff, as does the Alliance team. And the information that we can pull together is huge, like used really well in the business case to Wakakutahi for that additional funding. But obviously the additional funding comes at a certain percentage. So there's half, you know, Rich is at 49, it's still rates funded. So
So I've got a question. In terms of the level of service and the level of density of those roads, is there a clear plan? So we know that currently Park Street's being used by those 50 tonne trucks. So has there been any review of what that substrate and what that base should be, or is it still getting replaced at something that's still light?
Oh no, when we do it, we do I guess getting into detail, but the crew turn up, they dig a hole down to the sub base.
Yep.
They do a scaler, so they actually do a lab test, and then they look at some design charts, and they actually plot the design and tell them the thickness of the pavement they need for the scalers that are below it, and it's all designed based on the category of the road, what it's used for.
So the category of Park Street probably isn't got any category at the moment.
No, so the guys would know when they turn up that there's heavies, you know, that it'll be part of the information you give them. Yeah.
And then the other part is whether it's waterproof and doesn't have ruts and how it looks when you drive through different streets. The level of service on presentation, is there any, or is it just whether it's waterproof, whether it's safe?
No, typically it still look like a chip seal. So I wouldn't say there's a level of service on appearance, but typically they all look the same. Yeah, with the exception of
And it's probably more just activity. So there's the comment in terms of we can't stop cars using their place, but my understanding is there is some opportunity for council to make a bylaw about 50 tonne truck use on certain roads. Is that right?
Probably not a bylaw. Probably a distance incentive is better, because we know with bylaws fine people as you take them through courts, and that's just another cost. So
So the distance centres of those raised platforms and
the government's taking away class 1, class 2 roads.
Yes.
They were quite good.
Taking it away, have they?
Taking it away. So this case here, I think Power Roads suddenly become a heavy traffic vehicle because they don't want to use the roundabout in place. So in a way, the upgrade of the high street
And then-
is actually be another problem for us.
Yeah, and then just to follow on from Councillor Walker's comments, is that my challenge for you is to have 50 potholes next year. That's because 731 cents is an issue that we've got failings in our roads, whether we're repatching them. And so regular, quarterly would be great, I'm sure the board would love you to have becoming.
Fantastic, and anytime, just reach out to me. All about direct communication. Prefer to hear it directly from you guys than through sets of hands through council. Just makes it a lot easier.
Much nicer, Mr. Kirby.
So,
Thanks, Drew, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Righty. Yeah. That's going to give us her 3 minutes on Park Street. No, she's not. She's going to talk us about the historical plaque.
Only more than 3 minutes.
You're very good and reserved. Thank you for that. I could see you jumping up and down. Yeah, let's see the elevator. Welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you. So the history of this presentation is for some historical plaques to go down the CBD area of Motueka. Outtown Motueka and the Historical Association have been talking about this for several months, but we couldn't really go anywhere because we had no money. So hopefully after this presentation, we can secure money from the community board. So that's basically the background. And as promised, if we get the funding, then it's an absolute collaboration between the three organisations. And out of the budget, I believe it's the High Street beautification project. So that's what these plaques will come under. So there's actually 3 or 4 pages of this, so you don't need to look at it all. Basically, Coralie and Maureen from the Historical Association and myself walked around town for a couple of hours, had a look at what pictures, what images they've got, and also what buildings could have a plaque on. Some of them aren't suitable, they're just not big enough. So we've narrowed it down to 63 plaques. Just go the next one. That's the last one there. Now, so the plaques itself, this was quite interesting. They're printed on a really thin aluminium, so it's a bendy aluminium, and it's the heavy frames itself that keeps them secured. Graffiti proof. When I was talking to Golden Bay Heritage, they said they're not sure whether it's graffiti proof or whether they've just got really nice people in Target that haven't actually graffitied them. So the size that Golden Bay use is the 250 by 350 mil. It seems to work quite well with the information that's on the plaque, the picture and the wording, and the frames. Yes, so graffiti proof and waterproof. The frames are extremely heavy, but so they use Metal Image in Auckland. They've done a lot of the legwork. They had their first plaques put in 2008. Collingwood did try somewhere local, but the image faded really, really quickly. So they've chosen to stick with the Metal Image in Auckland. So as you can see, very pricey. I wasn't expecting it to be quite that much. So those prices, yeah, we provide them the artwork, which we've got a graphic designer that's on the committee of Outtown Motueka, so that's done for no charge. This presentation I have forwarded to Annette, the image creators, because she wanted to know the company details and the measurements, etc., to try and see whether in effect, they could deal with Metal Image as a, see whether we can get it cheaper. I don't know. But I think it's worth giving a local company a crack. So
Questions through to you, or you want to give it in?
I'll get them at the end because I've got a copy of the notes here. So this was the image that was sent through, so you can just see the size of the ones they're using in Golden Bay. So you can see the two outside ones are what they call the George size, which is probably a little bit of an overkill. They're a lot bigger, and some of the buildings I think would struggle to find room for that size. So and that's an example of one of them on the buildings there in Golden Bay. So just wanted to reiterate that this has been a really, it's been a massive team effort, working really well with the Historical Association. Really helpful information from Sally at the Heritage Golden Bay. Now, one of the things I wanted, she's actually mentioned a couple of things from, because they've already done it, you see, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Her advice was start small and build from there. You know, obviously we don't need the funding for 63 acts, so start small and just build from there. Using larger images and less wording. They found that if they put a lot of wording on there, it took so long to get it across, because there was, oh no, it wasn't that, it was in 1958 and somebody else would, it just took so long. So limit the information and have a large picture was their advice. Their first tranche of plaques that they did back in 2008, it took them a year basically to get all the information. It's not a 5-minute project, and I'm sure you appreciate it's a big project. A couple of things I wanted to ask was if you were happy to give us the money, any promotion. Obviously, we're working with Community Board at Motueka and the Historical Association. Can we also include that we've had a lot of advisory from the Heritage Golden Bay? So taking a few of us as well. They've been extremely helpful with the information. And the other question is, if the project took more than 12 months, because we've got to get, there's a lot of information that we need to get. Does that money stay with us, or do we lose it after 12 months? Do we have to do the project within 12 months, or I guess that's a big question, because it's going to be a large project.
Yes, I can. So the preference is the project gets can advise if I've got this right, is that we've been the funding partner, and how you acknowledge Golden Bay and the process of the project would be up to the Historical Society at that time as well.
Yep.
So I think there was a question from.
Oh, just the costing, that there was $300 for something I couldn't quite recently running.
Yeah, so it's $600 for the frame and the plaque, and the $300 is if we wanted to replace the plaque with a new image or, you know, different wording. They provide us with a new plaque with the printing on and the glue to replace it. So that's what the $300 is for. Because obviously we don't need to buy the frame again, so that's just for the yeah.
Won't need that at least the first year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unless
Unless we get it wrong.
Just $600 seems very expensive for one plaque, and it's not your fault. It's obviously what they're charging. But I'm just wondering how much. I remember we were talking about the price of tiles outside Yeah, and I remember a figure that cost like $150 rather than 600. Does anyone remember?
12 cent, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember? I just wonder, I feel like I'd be very apprehensive of accepting $600 for a plaque. Just if we could get it cheaper through council staff rather than that provided.
Historical, wasn't that a historical?
Because that's what under that too.
We got a requirement, I think, to replace it. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dowling wanting to answer.
Sorry, that was just my comment, and it's not against your work at all, Claire, it's just my opinion.
Councillor Dowling.
Mr Kirby will be the man to find out the answer for us because Glenn Thorne was the person who arranged the plaques out here on the walkway, which is now Richard Hollier's group, so there should be records on there.
I guess rather than having more plaques, more of the same, is to have something a bit different. And the idea would be to have so at the museum or at the eyesight, you could have a historical trail. So you can go around and have a look at the history of what the buildings were see what they are now, and then have a look at what they were 100 years ago. And I think that would also bring people into town as well, which would be good for the local economy.
Mr Kirby.
The price that you got, was that to do a number of them, was that just the one?
That's the price for 15.
15? Oh, okay, so it could come down, I think it's 100. If you did 100.
Yeah, well, I just,
$60,000.
yeah, it was just, well, I was hoping that we get 10,000. If you think it was 20,000, I can get a price for.
Has there been any conversations how you might turn $10,000 into $30,000 from some other grants or some other income streams?
We have spoken to the Historical Association about doing some fundraising.
I don't know much
But
about them. I hear your comment, your concept, but I also heard the presentation where Hollywood tried doing their own and they failed and ended up replacing them.
That's the sports economy. It's sort of, rather than us sort of trying to start from scratch, is using their expertise that they've been doing for the last 14 years. They've been really happy with it. The standard is fabulous. So for 10,000, yes, we can get 15. But when we were talking to Sally, she was like, crikey, that's going to take it's going to take a long time. So 15 is amazing. That's still going to make a huge impact. and then we can look at doing fundraising if we want another 10 or.
What have we gone from?
I'm just going to say I'm absolutely comfortable with that sort of price. So we do it properly first time. I know I was involved with the signboards for the Fort Bush entry, and it was done locally and it was a lot of money. Yeah, if you did 15 done in a year, well, I think that'd be pretty amazing work. So I'm comfortable with that.
Considering it's all voluntary work.
So apart from your own input, Claire, and the association, is there any funding coming from our town, Motueka, or is this really largely coming from our project fund,
Community board, yeah, because we're
So we have a $10,000 set aside, haven't we?
we're getting we're trying to get festive lights this year, which MBS have supplied you with, but we've still got extra costs for that, for the pole extensions and installations. So our budget's been taken.
Yeah, that's first all fine. I think, with Mr. Maru's question about can you look at RATA or lotteries or some other funding as well, would help immensely. Or, of course, the opportunity arises, put through as a special project in probably 2 or 3 years. So we actually have a program of doing perhaps not just 15, maybe 50 over a 3 or 4 year period. So it's a little bit like some of the work we're doing our footpaths in the estuary. We can't do very much in 1 year, we can do so much each year.
I think once we've done the first lot, we'll learn from mistakes and, you know, that sort of thing. And then the next lot will be a lot quicker to write off.
The hardest part is going to be how to decide which 15 you're going to choose, so I think.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity, Councillor Gregory, from some property owners might help influence where they might go.
Yes.
Alderman Armstrong.
I connect the large list of, I'm amazed at the number of buildings you found that would be appropriate. Have they been approached, the building owners, they'll be happy to have them on?
We've approached probably about 80% of them. We've been very busy. And we haven't had any pushback yet. So, yeah, as I said, that's 80%, which is good. A lot of them, of course, are over on the same people, so it makes it easier.
Okay, so can why don't you just recap where we are? So if I remember rightly, this was a project that the board had in their special projects, and then there's nobody to do this project. So David and Roll's acting chair last meeting went to our town this week and the Historical Society and said, we've got this, are you happy to do it? So thank you. Because it was going around in circles on rubbish bins and a whole lot of things around this table. So the work you've done is awesome. And I'm hesitant in terms of the price of the thing, but I also know that we criticise often why a half-assed job has been done. And so by being in contact with Goblin Bay and getting it from them in terms of we've done the cheap ones, they don't work, and we've had to redo them, I think is valuable learning. And the best behind it is it's about $4 a ratepayer in our ward that will pay towards 10,000. So that's about what people were contributing. So in terms of that, to get some history over this week, I'm happy to move the beautification project. It's approved for special projects. There's a project that's led by our town this week in the Motueka Historical District. So any other discussion?
Thank you so much.
I haven't done voted yet. All those in favour, right? Against?
I'm against.
But it's not looking as
So am I right in saying we're 5-2? We're half quiet over here. Yep. Okay. Done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, trying to get property owners to put something to it.
Well, that's the question about if there's only 15, how do we get in there? Yeah. Yeah, I just, it's not a hospital pass, but it's something this board wanted to do in terms of High Street, and then we've pushed it out to a community group, and then we're the 10th degree. Okay, we're going to pause for a second. So can we just adjourn for, oh, actually, we don't need to adjourn this part. Can I acknowledge and welcome Mayor Tim King? And at the same time, we're stopping and pausing to acknowledge some long-serving members around the table.
Brent? Maybe we should tag team this thing, we both signed these little certificates, so if you would like to. She's not there. I'm sorry, she's awesome. She's awesome. That should be yeah, for all my hard work, picking gifts and designing the certificates. Robert just actioning it at the very end. I'll let you go first.
Okay. Richard. So the face around many a photo in the boardroom and in the old boardroom of the Motueka Community Board. How many years? 1980 what?
I figured out the other day, I thought it was 27 years.
Wow. So on behalf of the community, there's still water around the table. If ever there's a roading issue or something to do with the real sector, you're on it. But you've just supported some plaques, but an amazing service to the community, and on behalf of us, congratulations, enjoy some retirement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, Richard. Obviously, you've been around for a fair number of years, and I guess this is over the last week or 10 days. Service has been one of those things, I guess, around the world that people have been acknowledging. And public service is a tough grind. Always has been. I suspect it always will be. I don't think it's going to change. The environment changes, people change. But there's always issues and challenges, and it takes a special type of person to put their hand up, and particularly to do it for the length of time that both Richard and each recipient have given to the public service. So, congratulations, Richard. Yeah. David,
Not time to go to Twitter.
Yeah, my time on council kind of overlapped. David was, I think, one of the surviving councillors when I first started.
And I'll be eternally grateful for actually all the councillors. There was a massive turnover in that election, but the councillors who remained could well have kind of taken that, this bunch of new bunch coming in, all this criticism, but they didn't. So David, amongst many others, Elaine Henry as well, really worked, I thought, really hard to make sure that we understood that coming in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and wanting to change the world wasn't necessarily as simple as it seemed from the outside. And so subsequently, I've spent a lot of time. David had one term, I think, off council in the time that I've been there. Other than that, he's been a fairly consistent fixture. And I've appreciated a number of things. It'll be no surprise to anyone in this room that he's been an absolutely stalwart advocate for the community of Motueka. And we haven't always agreed, and David hasn't always got everything that he wanted, but he has consistently and passionately put the case for Motueka, regardless of whether that's libraries, parks, reserves, stormwater. One of the things David Fame walk away and regretted not managed to have achieved as much as he would have liked. But he's also undertaken his oath, in my view, scrupulously to represent the district. And he's always managed to walk out of what have sometimes been, the odd, quite lengthy, very passionate commentary, but walked out of the room. And as soon as you walk out of the room, David's back to his normal friendly, jovial self, talking about cricket or rugby or something else. And then you come in and the next item on the agenda, he gives that his due consideration, makes a decision without any hangover from perhaps his disappointment from the decision previously. And that is something that is not as common as you might think. It's actually incredibly difficult to work in an environment where you can be both passionate about a project and then be able to park up the result of that, move on to the next thing and give it due consideration without any hangovers. So David, I've massively appreciated the opportunity to work with you over the last 20 odd years. And this is a very small token of our appreciation for the huge number of years you put into both the Motueka community and the Tasman region as a whole. I'll give you a second to keep your breath. I feel a speech coming.
I hate these ones, please. We had a similar situation last night in Maraho, and it's quite embarrassing really, because Maraho has been a very special place, as Motueka is a very special place. So it doesn't seem, it's 51 years since 1971, when I was a history and political science teacher and social studies teacher at Motueka High School. And I actually been conducting various seminars on political science and local government and government as a senior history teacher around the community. In those days, there were a lot of people who come from Holland and Poland and Germany that didn't know much about. And people from Riverside who didn't know much about how politics and government operate in New Zealand. So I was asked to give them those seminars. Next step was one of my colleagues in the history section in Motueka High, a chap called Jock Ferry, said, David, why don't you put your name forward for the council? Oh, all right then. However, the nominations were closed in 1971. The election took place. Now, I wasn't kicking myself that I hadn't got the nomination in, but there's a chap called Jim Rowling who was elected, and on the Saturday it was announced the election, and he was one of the councillors for Motueka Borough. On the Monday, he had a massive heart attack and resigned. And so we had a by-election, and I won the by-election in 1971 October. So that's what, 51 years, isn't it? Yeah.
Was -1.
And in 1998, the two others and myself stood for the mayoralty. I've been the deputy mayor for Kerry Marshall from 95 to 98. And there's a huge vote of contention about the new Resource Management Act
and the Tasman Resource Management Plan. I've been unfortunately, the Environment and Planning Committee Chair of that committee since 1992. And so with Murray Wattenclaw, myself, Elaine Henry, all stood for the mayoralty with John Hurley. And because John was a total outsider, he had governance experience with the Tobacco Board and Tobacco Federation. And at that stage, I don't think any one of the three of us, we were quite happy for any one of the three to become mayor. And then John Hurley, I think he got about 32% of the vote. And we got all less than that, of course. And he became the mayor of Tasman District. And it was the start of this man became deputy mayor to John. And we had 25 years as deputy mayor too. And now as mayor. And so we've been alongside each other to a degree since 1998. And he was about 18 years of age in those days. But it's been an enthralling experience, particularly with the community board, because in the years, I think 2004, 2007, the council decided to do away with the community board. And we had to get local government permission, I think, in the end. Came to Motueka and to Golden Bay. Golden Bay in particular was very strongly opposed to losing the Golden Bay community board. Motueka not quite so strong, but in the end, the local government commission confirmed the board to continue. And the last 6 or 9 years, the community board has grown immensely. And that's been a big feature of the board, and it's worth to the council. So please, as a board member, keep it up. But it's been a wonderful experience, a huge part of my life. And my children will tell you all about that. The 1990s especially were particularly because in '89 we had a massive change of government, a change of local government. We lost the borough council in '89, '88, '89, and became part of this new thing they called Tasman entity. We initially wondered why they called the new district after a small village in Tasman. That was one of the issues, but so be it. But there's a massive change coming up in the next 3 years. And we've got to look at what we're going to do with ourselves and the community in the next 3 years.
You'll be able to write us letters, councillor.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for this. I don't know what more to say, really, other than say big thank you. And it's been a wonderful experience. Anyway, as Tim has said, always hasn't been up, so there's been lots of downs, but we move on. It's like a cricket test or a rugby test. You might lose the occasional one, but you fight on, I hope. So thanks, Tim. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for your merit. It's been wonderful. Thank you. The community boards, we've had varied community boards in terms of their abilities and their representation and everything else, but it's been a good experience right throughout. Hard to leave. I'll sit down. Thank you very much.
I was a little bit worried because I saw your calendar and my head went wrong again. I just got here, it's just because we're keeping it a secret, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought I'd better say a few words too, since David did. Well, he was my teacher at high school. Teacher me history. So that's how it is.
I wasn't going to mention that.
But no, I too was on the first community board ever formed. We regarded the initial community board as a sop to the fact we were losing our council. Now, I think that was what most people thought at the time. But in the end, as David has alluded to, the fact is that not every community board worked well. And I think it's taken a long time, and I hope the new incoming people do abide by the fact that you only achieve something by negotiation. You don't achieve anything by demanding. And I think we've seen that right throughout the life of the community board. I stood down for 2 terms, hence the reason why I haven't had as continuous, because at the time my business was going through pretty hard times with income down dramatically on all three strings of it. So I felt I needed to stand down to get it back on its feet again. So, and I did achieve that. And now, of course, I'm now sold out of most of that, and I only own now 2 hectares of land. So it's quite a good feeling to be out of it. We now know that there is life out there, and I've just done a classic car run right up to Cape Reinga and back. And man, you see a lot of country by doing these things, and you do learn how the one thing that's showing up, we're complaining tonight about potholes, etc. It's a nationwide problem, and as is the roads with the slumps. So I think we have to learn as community board members to negotiate a deal rather than try and demand, because it will not work. And I think we have largely done that, as David has alluded to in the last 3 terms. We've largely done that, which I think is why we've achieved that little bit more. And of course, the workload for full council itself has gone up as well. So therefore, we've had to step in to take some of that away, which I think we have done largely. So I look forward to the fact that there'll be some new faces around the table, and that there'll be hopefully some fresh thoughts, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. I talked Barry into standing for council a number of years ago, and thankfully he was going to stand again. He's standing again, so that he hopefully keeps some continuity. I know it's family, but at the end of the day, I think we have achieved quite a bit, and I'm very pleased to move out of it now and try and step aside and do a bit more with family.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wanted to mention to David, sorry, Richard, but there's a particular reason. I've only known David for 13 years since I've lived here, but he was actually the estate agent who sold the house that we had. No, I never met him because it was all done on the phone. The first, I know you wanted to buy the place yourself. Told me that afterwards. Spent the first month settling in and getting everything here, and I thought I want to go and find a bit more about the community, and I saw it in the Guardian community board for having a meeting just to come and have a look and see what we did. So I thought, that would be a good way to learn a little bit about the community, and I turned up and just David there and was chairing it, of course. I didn't know that at the time. I mean, he was just a person. And Paul Hawkes, Tara Ford, and 2 grumpy Great Power people, and myself. And after they dealt with all the complaints from Great Power in that meeting, David watched and sort of, who are you to me? So why are you here? So I just said, I'm interested in what goes on in the community. So that was the first time I did that. And at that moment, I pretty much decided that this is actually interesting, not having been involved in local government whatsoever in Christchurch, this big city where you don't, not interested in what councils do. That took an interest, so David actually kicked that off for me, and I thought I'd report on community board meetings, and therefore I had 9 years doing Motueka online, turning up to meetings, and I have to very quietly say that sometimes after those meetings, David would ring me up and say, what did you think about that meeting? What do you think about what they said? That person said. We sort of sort of a friendship there, while he was the community board chair, I thought he did a brilliant job community board chair. I've just always been in awe of how much work he did for us. So I just thought I'd mention that now, and acknowledgement for that. Thank you, guys. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor King, for travelling over to the paradise part of Tasman. Coming back tomorrow. Oh, nice. All right. So we're going back to page 19 online. I'm not sure what it is in diligent, but item 7.2, and I see Glenys is online. I'm hoping, Glenys, we can take your report as read. Is there anything that you can highlight or speak to? And then any questions from the board?
No, I'm absolutely happy to take that as read. I don't have any particular comments to add to what's in the report, so happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the table? It being none, so on page 19, you'll see the draft resolution. So we received this report and approves the gifting as per the schedule in this report. So the mover, seconder.
One second, yeah.
The council will be voting just in time. That's good. Any other discussion? All those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Glenys.
Thank you.
I'll just make the point that I thought it was great that it's going to so many different organisations.
Yeah,
which is great. Not one person winning their great.
Okay. So we are going to page 32. Cheers support, which will be nice and light. Okay. So I've just noted in terms of our Zoom with Dr. Kotahi, community leases session that took place.
So what's that? There was a Zoom session as well.
Oh, yes.
But I attended and there was one resident online with 2 staff. So that wasn't well attended, but there were some good questions that came out of it and here's one. I won't say we respond, but
From the back.
yeah.
To be fair, I think the ones that came here was the work of Councillor Ogilvie that we got some clubs.
Yes, they got 2.
Yeah. So the intent from when I was here was the intent looked like it was from staff was a very good working with the group to understand. Yep. Note the operations committee. We've done this acknowledgement. So and again, as you all know, not much moves through council without a lady called Mrs. Shearer. So she did ask me what the thing and gave me some choices, and I hope you enjoy it. But Mrs. Shearer did all the work behind those scenes. Items from board members. Are there any? Board member.
I don't know if this is the time to bring it up or it's going to come up later on, but I noticed in correspondence there's quite an important letter from the Youth Council.
Yeah, I've got it at item 9.
So you discuss.
I thought I'd pick it up next. We can do it now.
Okay. No, you do it.
Councillor Down.
Yeah, I got a call, tap on the shoulder last night actually after a meeting about an issue at number 40 Vosper Street. So I understand that you and Ogilvie have also had a look at. So I went down today at lunchtime and had a look, and it's the road berm's been redone, new curb and channel. The area's supposedly been reinstated, the grass growing. It's the most bloody disgusting piece of contracting work I've seen since my history of being on council. The grass berm is no more than just an uneven surface with grass growing here and there, hollows, tripping hazards, the whole 9 yards. The place should be absolutely green as grass with the rain we've had if the surface has been completed properly, the grass sown properly, etc. I also have an issue. I walked across the road as asked by the ratepayer who lives at number 40. And had an eye view in my iometer of the curb and channel, but there is a hollow on the corner where it heads round to the drain, as if it is too low on that corner. So I would actually like a customer service request to be done. Staff to go and have a look at the finish of the grass berm. And I would also like someone to go, an authority, with a level machine, to check the level of the curb and channel to make sure that the finished product is actually going to do what it's supposed to and not fall in the corner.
And it's that burn is probably 36 to 42.
It is, yeah, like it's just the number. The house owner in number 40 was the one that put up the complaint last night, and I have to agree with him. And if that's going to be the standard of workmanship from that contractor, I don't care who it is, I don't want to know who it is, but I'll be very reluctant to turn around and say, go for it again on the current situation as it stands.
I've got you some photos I can send to you for your service request.
Is this a council project?
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah.
The Kevin Channel Extension Bridge, and it began in Selwyn Street, went all the way through to Greenwood Street on the western side. The curb and channel itself is okay, it's the way they left the berm, the grass berm is, there's still blocks of concrete and it hasn't been resown or repaired at all. That's what you mean, there isn't.
And we weren't sure that it finished though.
It looks like it has, yes.
All the cones never gone, so the cones never taken away about.
That's 4 weeks ago.
So it's going right there.
I don't know whether or not, as Barry is saying, we need to have some levels to see whether the actual drainage is as it ought to be. From where I was standing in the Selwyn Street northern end, it looks okay. But when you get on the other end, it doesn't.
We saw a couple of wet spots.
So,
in the
and
concrete.
there's some wet spots there too.
You can obviously see there's a high spot in the middle where the water's supposed to drain away. And when you get to the Selwyn Street corner where it goes around the corner, it almost looks like there's a hollow there before it gets to the actual.
Pass these round some, yeah.
So I'm sorry about that, but I'm just totally unhappy to see that we've spent money in this. So, I've just come from there today to I drove there on the way to our Benton's meeting, and I walked over here. No, I haven't been anywhere near anything. Stage. So if a customer service request has been done, it should be handled there.
And the members from the members.
Another one, when I was delivering my election pamphlets along Woodland, I came across what Tony Corbyn had mentioned. She mentioned to me before. There's a property just across the street. I didn't take number of them. All the growth, the trees, shrubs, and so forth in the garden come way out, even beyond the line.
You should have written on your pamphlet, please, company, yeah.
I wasn't thinking, I was just saying, who wasn't complaining, I can't remember. That's me too. Anyhow, I was. We passed them. I'll wait for
Number 14.
14.
14?
Number 14.
And that needs to the Kelly House. And it's about 2 down from Woodlands.
Yeah. It meant whoever it was, I can't remember who raised in the public forum. I said I'd heard a complaint from someone else that was home court down last there. Definitely, it is a hazard. You're walking on that, so you cannot keep off the road. Now, does the council have any power to require that cut that back?
If you put a service question, they'll send a note here. The property owner. Actually, they've received a complaint.
I'll do that.
I remember a few years ago, Mrs. Drummond shifted into Port Street. She used to walk down to the RSA on a Friday and Saturday night for a beer or a meal. I was in the RSA one night on Saturday night, she had blood on her cheek. Which, what's that to you? She says, oh, down the road there's bloody rose that hangs across the fence. And she said, I didn't notice it. I walked into it and scratched my face. I said, really? She said, yep. I said, all right. So I consequently did the phone call and said that someone needs to go down and have a look at this and talk to the people and get it cut. And about 3 months later, I went down myself and I met up with the door and I said, it hasn't been done, has it? He said, no. I pulled out the secretaries out of my pocket. I said, let's go for a walk. Down we went, I took the whole bloody lot off the fence and everyone left it laying on the footpath.
Need more than those secretaries.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying sometimes if the people just ignore it, that's the council's asked, so you.
Just to advise that I was requesting last night with regards to Maruho, that there's quite a significant slip or a slump in the road. And I've had a response already from Drew Hayes, who I didn't acknowledge before, so Drew, if you're listening to this, that is going to be managed with some traffic lights, because I've acknowledged it is actually quite dangerous. So they are going to be activating that and they'll come to us when this will come in. So, yes, it's a press action, do we?
Anything else? So going on to item 9, so apologies from the Youth Council with this example. If you go to page 56, there's a letter from the Youth Council around what project and where to from here. Now
Well, it's serious enough to, we should be discussing where to from here.
Yeah. I did invite the coordinator to see if she could come, but she's sick.
Yeah, there seemed to be a familiarity in that email address there, did you know?
Oh, yeah. So, how would you like me to respond? Because probably more importantly that I respond on your behalf rather than with the names of the similar.
I think we've got to be very careful with Tooks Bush. I brought this along today because we've just gone through the plan, and it's quite an important area in terms of iwi, as well as important to the overall population. And the policies it says, number one, manage the natural ecological values of Tooks Bush. Number two, upgrade the entranceway as I've done with the gifted pole and the seating. Concentrate on the recreation uses in the northwestern part of Tooks Bush. That's the northwestern side of the driveway in. It's on the New World side.
Yep, we're playgrounds. Yep.
Upgrade the playground while ensuring there are no impacts on the native forest. Ensure the recreation activities do not damage the vegetation. And then remove all asphalt from the parking area, which I've done half of that currently. We continue to allow groups to use the Imagine Theatre, which is happening. When it ran to the east, the subdivided, consider a walkway. And the subdivision has now been withdrawn by the owner, I believe. I mean, you all know my attitude towards the bush, protect them as much as possible because it's quite iconic in Motueka.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the statements made here. So the first incident where when the pole was damaged was on a young person. It was an adult being
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the stigma that it's used to causing issues here, I accept in terms of it's not always the case. In fact, people I've seen there certainly aren't. They might just, some of them are under 25. And the other part is I believe there's a real danger in protecting it, having it closed rather than protecting it and letting it flourish and having some presence there. Because that's the no presence part is where the other people will go. But I guess I'm just asking, how would you like me to respond? Just the cleanups in Tooks Bush will be okay. I guess the article, what I'm going to do is going to be okay. I guess the depth of that letter was, from a young person's perspective, they see young people getting blamed for the majority of the activities taking place there. They're going, that's not fair.
I think what we have to do is refer this, to Parks and Reserves Management, to Richard Holder, and to Beryl Wilkes, because they are in charge of the bush and its operation at present, just like we have to in Kimberley Beautiful. I mean, our planting.
I do believe that this project is part of that though. So that brings back Tooks Bush. It's been must be just about a 7-year project.
Can I say?
Sorry, yeah.
I honestly just think it's miscommunication between those two groups, and that we should just facilitate a conversation for the cohesion, because they're both doing really cool things in the actual park. And whoever said about the youth thing, it probably would have been, I imagine, one person in particular, but it would have just been received maybe a little bit dryly than it was meant to. So I honestly just think if someone could host a meeting between those two groups.
Just pretend
Yeah, because that would seem planted.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Belinda.
Yeah.
When I read this letter, and I potentially could be a little bit biased because I actually do some mentoring work with the youth council, but the request to me is that I'd like to see some rubbish bins so that actually they can address the litter that's been created, and the litter is at extreme levels. And some of the objects that they need to pick up and clean up, as Council Albury has done previously, are quite harmful if you were to stab yourself with one of them. So I think the request is A, to be acknowledged that the youth don't always create, in fact often are the problem within that particular area, but that they want some rubbish bins and they want them serviced. Is that not what the letter is asking?
They also want some seats as well about the playgrounds. So there's three things with that. I think they just want to, what it sounds like, because I keep talking about this, what it seems that they're trying to do is that they had some more major intentions to upgrade playgrounds originally. It sounds like they're peeling that back in terms of a space that's serviced, but seating and setting the rubbish bins will potentially bring more activity to there, which might not be what the end result is desired. But in the reserve management plan, the northwest side where the playground is said to be is still being preserved for recreational use. I just want to know how I'm going to respond to it. Thank you for your letter.
Mr. Chairman, I go along with Cindy a little bit on that, because that's the way I read it myself. And the fortified rubbish bins, I think, aren't stupid. They probably get, of course, people bring their rubbish from all over and dump it in them, which is one of the side effects. But anyway, hopefully we'll have a cleaner reserve if we do provide more rubbish bins. You know, and I think that's curbs. I think that sounds pretty reasonable. So I don't think any of these requests or, you know, bringing it to our attention are unreasonable, and I think we should be investigating. And I think the feedback they got from some people that, oh, keep young people out of here because they only make a really mess of it, is understandable, because it has happened to a degree. But at the end of the day, I think to encourage the use of what is a lovely reserve, I think we do need to add a few little bits extra, if you like. I think they're not too onerous.
So you're wanting me, do you want me to write to Mr. Hollier? So, and just say, sent that letter from the Youth Council, can you feedback to the board in terms of the thoughts on items 1, 2 and 3? Yep. And you'll be also happy if I put something in there in terms of where it was unfortunate to hear the youth were being blamed for the issues.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the more people you have in there, the less chance you're going to give them families.
The more positive use of the area that you can get. Okay, so that was the Youth Council public forum. Mr. Corey's we've heard from Drew in terms of the roads, and Mr. Williamson's areas will be noted.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. But I was just saying, I think the one who's talking about weeds on the sides drastically reducing, he is probably referring to the inlet. Just because it does hit, especially on going towards Scotland bars. I feel like the program of work is probably like 3 days or maybe even up to a week out. When you're actually cycling, you're getting bush in your face, and it's within the winter. So I think that actually does have merit, and it could be reviewed, and we could actually, if we could make that a little bit less. And then the glass on the cycleway, especially heading out towards Long Motueka, but that does get swept. But it just keeps getting glass on it, so I don't know the answer to that or how often it happens.
Can I just ask, just to give you, can we just understand what the cycleway maintenance program looks like? Because I have no idea. But I know that I used to get whacked with the stuff around my ankles as I went through some, also around Tasman Way. Yeah, like here and there, there's a little channel. But what is the cycleway maintenance program for Motueka, and especially the sweeping part?
It's always covering well.
I'd be right in assuming that if there was a service request for broken glass on the cycleway, that would just get responded to. Yes. Okay. There's a big problem with the
Yeah.
road pass on the.
Because it's gonna require more than one service. It's a recurring
Yeah,
problem. Then there's
yeah.
gonna be data to
And so I can't find out a way that I can change the road pass for catching them. The older person over 70. Not the young person.
I just feel like just based on the other comment that I think we should delegate someone to get back to him. Because otherwise he's probably got someone to speak here and he has no idea that we've had this conversation.
So what do you want me to
do? It, but
Shall I write to him just saying we've ordered it to Parks and Reserves?
Yeah.
So I'm Parks and Reserves manager, I'm inquiring what the retail making progress. Okay.
That's good. Ross Maven. Ross is the chief executive managing director of Great Taste Trails Trust. So I was going to raise this with.
So should the question go to the Great
Taste
Trust rather than the council?
then doesn't the council have budget to?
Can you fund them to a large degree, not entirely?
We get funding from MD.
Okay.
So was it a responsibility of council staff or was it a responsibility?
No, they need this responsibility. It's
That's what I read. Well, it's both read.
And is all the trials he's talking about part of the Great?
Yes, as I'm reading here, yes. And this is typically, people don't understand that there are two partners in this. You've got the Great Taste Trail Trust, and you've got sometimes community board. The community board looks after the piece around the estuary, which is not. There's a part which is Great Taste Trail, a part which is community board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the part of Blue Victoria too, I don't think that was part of the Great Taste Trail.
No, I wondered.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Doesn't that lead up to Riverside?
It goes from Riverside to Wyman's Road. But you're talking this side of Wyman's Road.
Yeah. North side of Wildwood Road. Used to hear the cars going down the road on Friday night, Saturday night, and that, and the hopping of the bottles going out of the cars as we drove down the road. Wasn't teenagers.
Okay.
Thanks for the point of clarification. Now, if I may, through Mr. Chair, can I please have a copy of Mr. Haley's letter that was presented on that he wrote on the 11th of June, presented here on the 21st of June?
I didn't copy it, because I don't think
So
I'm
that- if that can be
I get to respond to it.
Thank you. And that brings up another one of my concerns when Kevin Curry spoke about the no response. And I think as a board, we've had this discussion about if somebody comes to public forum, that it's the polite thing to do to give them a response that we've actually spoken.
I'm sure he's got a response though. So he had a response statement on Council Oakley gave it to him on the time. And he went, thank you. It's
Okay.
been delayed though for a whole, like the whole of these council have been delayed.
But that's David Oldby's response. I think it would be better if it came from the board, with the board letterhead on it, so that they know this is a discussion that the board has had.
I also have followed up something for him with Mike and then forwarded it to him.
I think it's quite a bit of communication with the answers and
Something from staff as well. Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's actually.
Yeah.
It was on the action.
But the problem was, it was the delay from the lag from, and so we could go back and we have a number of things. Every special project we've got a delay, every delay of things we keep writing back.
Well, I'm just suggesting that his words where there's been no response in 4 months, so if
So
something.
he talked to me and I rang Mr. Kirby straight away, sent an email and said that I'd had the answer from today, which he got delivered. It doesn't actually have to take a whole month to be able to ask me a question or be with a question.
I'm just saying that there should be a template that when people come and speak at public forum, that at the end, as an action point, a letter of acknowledgement that they've attended, and if there's any questions that we've acknowledged.
I guess it's a grey area because standing orders, we've only just brought him to talk about this into the chair's report this term. It used to just get shelved. So how does council handle it? How does the public forum handle the council? You're right in replying. I'm not saying it's not the right thing. I know that we had to, just talking about things that raised in public forum, I had to have about 5 conversations to get that over the line.
what happens is the chairperson will signal to the secretary will.
Yeah.
Please make note of that and refer it to the appropriate person.
Okay.
That's right.
But the loop,
They take note if it's anything of action, but
but the loop is formally acknowledging it. Yeah.
it's not an agenda item, it covers a conversation about what was brought up.
No, no.
It's up to the chairperson, so to whoever is the secretary, and you please make note of that and refer it on.
Okay. I think, all right. Our last board secretary didn't like writing letters. So I used to do it, but it was been, she saved me a couple of times. All right, so follow that up. Anything else? For public forum?
Carrots.
Yeah.
I think so, most of
No,
What did Nick ask?
It's red packet.
I don't think this, no, he asked about, no, we but the same, about the search warrant of the property and the two cases that he's dealt with and the petrol in the car. I guess he asked if he could have some conversations with some senior leadership team. It was really sad.
He's had conversation with two other senior leaders and he's also not, his answer seems to try us.
You like to.
You might not have to have a conversation.
Because that's part of the challenge, isn't it? Is that where do people go when they can't go anywhere?
I think it's the child, we've dealt with that issue and he's had the leader outlining exactly what the situation is and he keeps harping on about it. I just, so maybe we're just going to go over the same thing again.
We've not been able to meet with them and satisfy his concerns. And there's not much more that we can add to the questions that he's asking us. He met with Richard, myself, Kim, and Leone, and Councillor Wood was there as well, and Mr. Hallier. And we had quite a long discussion. The meeting actually ran over time, and we had quite a long discussion about that. We asked him at the outset of that meeting what could good look like.
What was the outcome of this meeting?
And we've got a list of things that would represent good for him, some of which we were unable to deliver on. I won't go into them here, it's not my position to do that, but some of them we just weren't able to deliver on. It's not within the council power to deliver on some of those things. And then I understand after that meeting, he also had a separate meeting with Kim Drummond. And this is the first that I have heard that he wants to meet with Richard and myself again.
So what is the process? What's the process for a member of the community to organise a meeting with the TDC and stuff? I actually don't know. What is it? How do I do that? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Meetings.
Do we know if the agency has come back to him with any answers?
She went back with an email after that meeting that we had. We got copies of that. And he came back to some accusations as a result of that email with other information.
So is the meeting taking place at Peter Island?
Okay. Subject to the. So are you prepared to meet with him, I guess, is the next question.
I'm prepared to meet with him, but I just have an apprehension about where it's going to go because we've met with him so many times and it's obviously successful.
Okay. Right. Do you remember what Mr. Hallier's email was?
Just a letter on the 11th of June, all of questions and new answers.
Around Peter Island.
But not from.
Didn't say Peter Island. He didn't.
You did quote Peter Island.
Okay. Are you in a position to answer the questions? I don't know. Yeah. Will we find it? Okay. So if we can find that letter and then, because you're going to be in a better situation than me.
I can probably guess what the questions were. We've already answered one of them. The answer that we had to bury it.
Was that answered to Mr. Hallier or somebody else?
It was answered to Mr. Henry.
Okay.
And Mr. Hughes, the same answer. And they are remaining things.
We can have a look at that later and then. Thank you. Any other items? Nope. See the board's chair's report, seconded by Councillor Dowler.
Sorry,
What I would say is that in any event, we wouldn't go and meet with Nick until after the election.
Yeah, yeah.
Can he be advised on that?
You can advise it.
Chairman, I thought I'd just raise a little point so I don't forget. I wondered if we could have a little photo at the end of the session, please. Too bad, as you are.
Last two.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can arrange something.
Oh, thanks.
Never-ending shop.
Page 38, 7.4, financial summary, so moved. Is that Tom said? Move Tom said?
Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favour, aye?
I'll mix it up now.
Okay, 7.5, the action list. Number 1. I think the skate park's just on it's on a journey now.
It is on journey. It's getting closer.
You'll see the blue update in terms of from Murray, and I can't tell you who Murray is. I went to Jed headquarter, it's Murray from Network Management. So in terms of currently planning more underground power cables for Motueka, not currently.
Drop that item to the next list.
Yeah, keep going. Thoughts push graffiti. I haven't actually been in there. I was in there just after the last, prior to the last one, the water blasters and the people were in there. I haven't been back in there since.
It's all been painted now.
Yeah, this would be,
Graffiti from the playground and that round.
The actual play equipment has been painted over,
Okay.
and it's not been for the third question.
Okay. Lease agreement? I think it was preempting it. Because my understanding is they're still working through the variations of all the different groups, what they've got and coming to a solution for one. So I think you can take that off too. Sorry, just silence on the Gazette the way you talk to.
No, this is something else. But I messaged, I usually message Lynn, but now we've had this conversation that it doesn't make sense. So I will write this. It was just about putting it on. I'll just email Ross and ask him. It was just about putting signs to say when the toilet is around the inlet.
And David's done that, so the thing was here to come off. Mr. Kirby. Oh, we can just note that, eh? We'll take that off too. Yeah, 20 years. Private Richard Holly Reddick Reserve Setting Special Project.
That's the one.
Now, Richard, please.
Haven't heard. No news.
And the next board will receive. Is it going to count? Is this in your council papers last week? No.
The old library?
Yeah.
No, I apologised to the council last week. It was a Richard Hollis situation.
Yeah.
I'm working with John Ridley out to get someone else in to start progressing it. Can I say that there's three things involved here. You've got to deal with the old library first because there's a service centre.
Yes.
How can the library to the service centre? And what we do with the service centre, how can we want it to serve it? So there's a whole like teaching that also sort of complicates that. There's a whole lot of discussion around that. I think we need to deal with the old library first. And then oh, there's some comment made. There's the service centre. The service centre goes to the old library. We'll go to the old service centre. So
just in the feasibility study.
It's the feasibility study. So it's just it doesn't have to.
Okay, so action was received. Yep. Armstrong, Tom said. Special project received.
Can I just comment on the last one?
Yep.
That's the copy of the plan. What I've asked for is price. Question asked, well done. Yeah. That's for the good and well, that's thank you for the other one. I feel it's something with the wastewater disposal. So straight together for another.
Which is operations for 280,000 for the toilet.
Oh, it was a 280. Oh, sorry.
Does it need to go in the middle of the park? That's my question. Can we not, there is a shed on the eastern side of the park.
All that discussion had taken place at that rest.
It had been at the time when we were talking about a link between the toilet and the recreation centre for the sewerage.
Yeah.
And now we're saying we're not going to have a sewage treatment, just going to have a tank.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, can we go back to the original site, which was alongside the shed? Because it's stuck in the middle, it looks like a shit house. Which I know it is, but it's not a very attractive look in the middle of a.
Originally, there was going to be surrounded by some car parking as well, though, wasn't it? There's car parking on the side, car parking.
Even the side of the car park, we're going to link the sewerage system by network, by pipes from the toilet to the rec centre or to the skate park. But now we can't do that. So this is now a composting toilet underneath the tank, underneath the toilet.
Not a compost.
Well, it's a tank. I'm thinking, well, rather than having the middle, can we have it perhaps in a more appropriate spot?
Well, I'm a bit
Yeah, I know.
background to it because all I know is back where it is now. I didn't realise it was a previous location, so I can pass that.
You can have a septic tank truck running around out there draining it all the time. You certainly don't want it somewhere it's going to get stuck.
No, you don't. That's true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, special projects received. Discussion?
Right, yeah, when Victoria's good. Obviously got the ground up, the back down.
One small point about that. Notice after a little shower the other day, the big tractor's underwater.
Yeah, good.
So therefore it really needs probably putting their full in there to level it.
Well, I thought I saw maybe an orchard track where they're dragging the shingle away to try and leave a drainage trench, so it's water run off the orchard over the path onto the side of the road.
You did.
I did, you know. I didn't think I was mentioning that. So, yeah.
It's quite healthy about in puddles, don't you know?
Hell, it was deep, though, places.
Any other discussions? Any other discussions in there? Just in terms of adding in the beautification, $10,000, you can add it to the list. So received? Downer. I'm sure. Correspondence noted? Yeah. So correspondence received. Are okay. Is that the end?
Looks like it.
Jane.
Yeah, 65.
Okay.
No,
We've done what it's.
Oh, well, it must be bloody quick.
No, thank you.
That must have been done.
Oh, righty, let's go back. There's 2 sets of minutes. Thanks. So, what were they? They were the minutes of the 16th of August 2022 and the special, the extraordinary meeting on the 30th of August 2022. Have a mover?
Oh, yeah, I have a question. So there's historical placards that
Right.
you've talked
Let's-
about.
let's do the
Where do I
minutes
get to them? Well, what did they have been? Because my apologies, I wasn't at the last board meeting.
No, you were sick.
And so I hadn't read any of what Claire was presenting. In other words, that you decided it was going to be placards on buildings as opposed to rubbish bins and other things. So where do I find that information? Because if it was given to me in those minutes, how come I can't find them in the minutes when I've been blind? So I can't pass minutes if there's a chunk missing, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I remember having some conversation around it.
at the last board
remember?
meeting, because
I
they
was
were
late.
waiting on
I was late.
confirmation to go and speak to our town, so there must have been some conversation for it to have got to that level. So how do I read that if it's not in the minutes? Hence, I didn't vote for it tonight, because I had concerns about the $600 for a pickup.
It's similar.
Ah,
Oh,
thank you, English teacher. Sorry.
We sort of discussed a similar thing last month as well, and must be put in minutes, sort of, is discussion behind something as against the final decision. The minutes are accurate, it didn't record that we had
That's exactly right. What you just said.
didn't
Says here, the board discussed the beautification question. Chair Armstrong provided feedback on recent discussion with our town Motueka and the Motueka Historic Association regarding historical plaques. Member Maru agreed to invite our town Motueka to the next meeting to share more information on the plaques and to seek commitment from our town Motueka to work in partnership with the board.
So I had to listen to the YouTube clip to get that conversation.
That's
That's
the
not
minutes.
recorded.
they just read that.
I just read that in a minute.
But the discussion that was had, do I have to listen to YouTube to capture?
Because they're not verbatim.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Just leave it as much.
I'll go and listen.
I tell you what, if we did a verbatim one, you'd have exercise. That's what
And so.
I'm.
And so,
It's like fun.
so, who seconded?
Sorry.
Tom said, any other discussion, all those in favour, aye? It's carried. Now, Jane.
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ao, te aroha, me te maru tau, te hei mauri ora, which is may peace, love and safety be upon us all, te hei mauri ora, legal tau.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks, Jane. And all the best for tonight.